Hello, welcome back to Quality Decoded. Today I've got another topic that I want to talk about, and that is release planning and what you should be doing in release planning that you might not be doing and that you should be doing. So, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, planning is often used on Agile teams to kind of plan out the next release. So you'll have some increment of time, let's say a quarter, like 3 months, and you'll call that a release, and then you'll do release planning, where you kind of break down your features into stories and like have teams taking in those stories and understanding the work and planning out when they think they might be able to get it done. Of course, the constant in Agile is change, so business priorities may change mid-release, but this is at least our plan that we're going to go forward with, and if all goes according to plan at the end of the release, everything we planned for gets done. So here's a couple of articles you can look up online about Agile release planning. This one's from Lucidchart. You can see the URL here is lucidchart.com/blog/agile release planning. Let me zoom in a little bit in case that's just too small for everybody. I'm not going to go through the whole document, but you can kind of read about how to create a good Agile release plan and what goes into it. And Lucidchart is actually a pretty decent tool for setting up that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with the Scaled Agile framework, this Agile framework is used in a lot of financial companies and banks and things like that, but they call it PI planning. And it kind of goes back to what I said about a release being a certain increment, but you've got a program increment. And that's your cadence, where you'll have like quarterly planning or monthly planning, or maybe you do some type of like continuous planning after every iteration or every other iteration or whatever. But planning is essentially, where you're figuring out what you're going to be working on. And so here is one thing that I think often gets overlooked and missed in planning, and can lead to you not hitting your commitments and your release and your stories becoming bigger than expected. And that's factoring in quality to your planning. So let's say you're building out a new feature for your product, and you're going to have to write like production code for this feature. Maybe you need to spin up a new database. Maybe there's a new service. And then maybe there's some changes on like a front end UI to hit the service, which then hits the database. So you've got like some new integrations. And you meet together as a team and talk about what's it going to take to spin up these new applications, and how much code is it going to take to add in all of this functionality. And you come up with a time frame in your head of, I think I can get this done within like a month or two. And so you think, okay, 2 months, we can take on some more work, right? So we get another feature that maybe that feature will take us a month. And then we know, okay, our release now, we're pretty full, based on our history, our velocity, we know how much work we can get done. But if you don't factor in the quality aspects, you're going to miss those commitments. Think about with the first feature we talked about, you're going to have to write unit tests. And I think most engineers, if they're thinking about how long something's going to take, they're factoring in some time for that. But in my case, there are times where I'm probably spending more time on the tests than I'm spending on the production code, or maybe it's about equal. It kind of varies, but if I think the production code is going to take maybe a month, then I know I might want to factor in another month just for testing. And that's going to include unit testing. That's going to include integration and API tests. And that's going to include some end-to-end tests from the UI. I will say, when it comes to testing, a small side note, you should follow what's called the test automation pyramid. I'm going to have another video just on that topic coming up. But you want the most of your tests to be unit tests, and then less integration tests, and even less end-to-end tests. But I'll get more into that in a future video. But it's not always just testing, right? I mean, there's just having time to address technical debt and to refactor things, and to know that you're going to write something one way and then realize that maybe it needs to be written a different way. So Don't assume like the happy path is going to be everything just gets written in one go and you're out the door and you're shipping it on time, right? Like, know that quality takes time. And I had other videos about the non-functional requirements, but there's so many non-functional requirements, things that you have to consider, like performance. You might want to do some performance testing and some load testing. And if this new integration that you're building is handling personally identifiable information or personally identifiable financial information, PII and PIFI, then you might want to do some sort of security testing, maybe some sort of penetration testing to make sure that everything is secure and that nothing's going to break. Making sure it's available and scalable and performant. And there's so many things to think about. Observability, is it logging? Is everything monitored and alerting properly? The list goes on and on. So when you're thinking about the stories and the features that you're going to be working on for your upcoming release, or even if you're just looking at like planning for a single iteration, make sure that these quality factors and that these non-functional requirements are top of mind during that process. Factor in the time that it's going to take to do all of this stuff into your estimates. One of the things that I often hear from people in interviews when I ask them about their unit testing strategies at their current companies, many times those folks that don't do unit testing say that, the client doesn't want to pay for it. And I can understand the context. I can understand where the people are coming from that say stuff like that. But at the same time, like, this is not a client's decision. This is not a business decision. These non-functional requirements are requirements that we as engineers impose on ourselves. Nobody else is going to impose on us that we write unit tests, that we write integration tests and end-to-end tests and have load tests and security tests and test out our performance and have observability, right? Like, they just want this stuff to work. They want it to work well. They don't want it to go down. They don't want it to break. And so it's on us to adhere to non-functional requirements that will ensure that the systems and the software that we're building are going to be reliable and maintainable, and all of the other things that come with that. So I find it hard to agree with the sentiment that the client doesn't want to pay for it. So it should be something that you do. This should be a focus for any developer, any engineer, any programmer, whatever you call yourself. You have to consider quality, especially in planning, to make sure you have enough time to do what you need to do to meet all those requirements. So that's it for now. I appreciate you tuning in and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying my content, and we will see you next time.